Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time today, we wanted to talk a little about lime. And no, Darren, that it's not the lime you're going to put in your drink.
Well, I thought it was kind of tasty. You know, when we talk about agriculture, the best part is we have great food. And I thought, wow, limes are a tasty treat, especially in a dessert or in a drink.
Okay, so what we're talking about with lime is calcium carbonate. And I've gotten lots of questions from farmers, even just this spring, saying, what are those great big piles of white junk out in your fields? Why are they sitting there? And I said, they're fantastic. What that is, that's lime out of water treatment plants. We spread it out on our field. It raises our soil pH, and we're able to raise a lot better crop. So it's basically a waste product that was going to go in the landfill. We actually use it. Our plants can use it, and it's a great thing.
Well, one of my happiest days last fall was when I saw a great big pile of lime get delivered to the end of my field, because I knew I was going to fix things. As we're doing different things in our field over the last 100 years, the soil has changed a little bit. Now you think about some ground in where Brian and I are from in South Dakota. This ground was pasture and grassland at one point way back in time. But as the population of the world has grown, the demand for food has increased as well. So much of this grassland now has been broken up and farmed. Well, the old practices that were used back in the early part of this century were a little different than today. And commercial fertilizer wasn't available the way it is now. And there are just a lot of different things from soil erosion and so forth. And in my particular ground, I've got some eroded hilltops. Now my pH is very high because some of the topsoil is washed away and the subsoil was a little bit higher in pH. So we're trying to deal with some of those issues. Then we've got other ground where we've got an extremely low pH. And that's where we're putting this lime on, to try and raise that soil pH up with a chemical reaction that this calcium carbonate has in our soil.
Okay, so in low pH soil, just as a real quick chemistry lesson here, what the problem really is we've got excess hydrogen. Now to get rid of that hydrogen, we can put calcium carbonate out, or as we call it, lime. Calcium carbonate is just calcium and carbon and oxygen. There's nothing real dangerous about it. There's nothing dangerous at all. I mean, heck, you could even eat lime, even this kind of lime, Darren. It won't hurt you.
Might not be as tasty as the green fruit, though.
Probably not. But anyway, when you put that calcium carbonate out in this low pH ground, what will happen is you'll end up with three things that will come out of it. You'll have H2O, so water. You'll have carbon dioxide that can go up in the air, and you'll have calcium left. So when it's all said and done, you have more calcium to enrich your soil. You'll have your soil pH a little bit higher. You got rid of some of that hydrogen that was hurting your soil and hurting your crops. It's all a good thing.
And you actually feed your plants, because Brian talked about, well, carbon dioxide is one of the products of this chemical reaction. Well, guess what? It's going to be out in a field where we have growing plants. And a lot of times you hear about house plants that if your house plant isn't doing good, you just talk to it a little more. Well, why does that make a difference? Because carbon dioxide is what we're emitting when we're breathing out. And plants are taking in that carbon dioxide and getting food from that. So the plant needs to take in carbon dioxide, and that's released from this reaction. So it actually helps your plant growth as well.
So once again, lime in our discussion here is calcium carbonate. Where farmers will use this is if their soil pH is below about 6.3 or maybe below 6.0. If it's anything less than that for soil pH, farmers need to raise that pH for the most part, because most crops like to have about a neutral pH, which is a 7.0. So if the farmer puts lime out there, he can raise his pH up, and then he will raise a better crop. It's just a waste product, so it's a great thing for the environment.
It's a waste product in one system, but in farming it's positive because we're putting more calcium in our fields. So we talked about low pH, but also the other situation is if we're just short in calcium. If you're looking at your base saturation on your soil test and you see that number less than 60%, that means there's not enough calcium out in your field, and you'll benefit putting lime on in those situations regardless of what the pH is in most cases.
Well, Darren, the only problem with making our soil better is now it's probably going to have a few more weeds. Those weeds are going to do better as well. And our weed of the week is one of the toughest ones that farmers will deal with in the spring. We'll show you how to control it coming up later in the show.